about, described it as a lynch mob. Another mutual friend of Mary's and mine refers to it regularly as the shit on Bernal book. And so I think there are very different perceptions of this book.
Is that a title that you come up with on the spot, or is it something you've been thinking about, Professor Bernal?
It's a title that a mutual friend of Mary's and mine uses regularly. He's a colleague at Cornell. It's not, I wouldn't have thought that up.
I think that if you look carefully, and I'm sorry, book carefully yet. I think when you do, you will see that there are not very many ad hominem attacks in it, although I find your defensiveness about that somewhat curious, since in Black Athena volumes 1 and 2, part of your methodology has involved actually contextualizing people and talking about their family relations, their own personal backgrounds. And so I'm a little bit puzzled by that kind of response.
I have no objection to people attacking me personally. What I would like to see is a all-round collection, and I think that as I live by the sword of the sociology of knowledge, I must be prepared to die by it. And I think that people will see in 20 years where I'm coming from or what my personal problems or axes were. And I think that's part of the story of the book. But I think there's also the substance of the book. And I would have hoped to have found a wider scan, and we've had many collected volumes on this. I mean, don't think this is the first response to my work. There have been 4 journals now have had selections of articles on my responses and their responses to my responses, and there has been real dialogue. This was a book which I was not told about till long after it had begun, and when I was told about it and asked if I could see the pieces to write a response, I was told there was to be no response, and furthermore that the responses that I had published to the articles criticizing me were not to be included. This does not seem to me opening the debate, it seems to me stamping out heresy.
May I respond to that briefly?
We will have a free-for-all in a minute. But I wanted to follow up on a phrase that you said, and I didn't want to leave it unaddressed, the issue of full disclosure. And it is to that I'd like to ask the question of Professor Lefkowitz. Are you comfortable with the fact, you obviously were comfortable with the fact that your book, Not Out of Africa, subtitled How Afrocentrism Became an Excuse to Teach Myth as History, was underwritten by several foundations that have reportedly rightist leanings. I wondered whether this was a reflection of your own personal or ideological view, or whether you were just so cash-strapped that you took money from anyone.
No one tells me what to think, and no one tells me what to say except me, and the main financing of this book was out of my own pocket.
But surely you can appreciate the color of accepting funds from foundations that do not enjoy wide acclaim and receptivity. And I thought that maybe there was some concern on your part, in as much as you were interested in integrity, scholastic integrity and all, that you might have foregone the grants in the interest of academic and scholarly integrity.
If they had asked of me to do anything, I would not have accepted these grants. They did not do that. Therefore, the grants did not go to me. They went to Wellesley College, which had no objection to taking the money.
But still, the question remains. You have a duty, do you not, inasmuch as you are preparing work, the aim of which is to overturn the revisionism, you say, that is going on in black studies, particularly in African studies, this whole battle that you have been dealing with in terms of Afrocentricity, do you not, regardless of where Wellesley chose to accept money from, do you not, as a scholar, have an obligation to discern where this money is coming from, to see whether the source is compatible with your own views as a scholar?
I did not see anything in the conditions of the grant that inhibited what I did and what I meant to do or say or think. I believe that I acted with perfect integrity. Now, you may disagree with that, and you may disagree with the aims of those foundations and other foundations, and that is what we do in a free country. Until they are outlawed, I don't see what else can be done.
Well, let me ask you the question perhaps more directly. Had there been, say, a foundation to wipe out scholarship of any sort, if such a foundation were to have given money to Wellesley College, would you have found it equally acceptable to take money from such a foundation to further your work?
I don't know what foundation you're talking about. This seems to be a
totally hypothetical question.
It's totally hypothetical. I don't know what you're trying to force me to say or to compel me into
please do
what
understand.
corner you're trying to put me.
I'm not forcing.
Go ahead and attack me.
I'm not forcing you to say anything, Professor Lefkowitz. I'm just trying to elicit a cogent response from you.
Well, you be the judge of my response.
All right. Okay, in this last round, before we get to questions, and we will get to questions, but let me warn you, you ought to have questions that are questions, not lectures, and that are straight to the point. In this round, it will be a free-for-all in which all of the discussants are permitted to ask questions of each other and to chime in responses whether they are asked the question directly or not.
Will we have time to sum up afterwards?
Yes, we certainly will.
You're treating. I think we should. All right. I just wanted Professor Lefkowitz to know some basic information about the concept of Afrocentricity. There's a lot of people who believe in the African awakening and discovering of their history and their culture who do not accept the word Afrocentricity because it's a compromise with the word Africa. It's either African centricity or it's nothing.
That's right.
And if she attacks Afrocentricity as the teacher of myth, have she attacked the nonsense about Columbus discovering America? Because he discovered absolutely nothing, and he committed an act of genocide. He set in motion an act of genocide 10 times worse than the act of genocide in Europe called the Holocaust, as though that was the only Holocaust in the world. That event in Europe was wrong. And even if only 6 people were killed, it was wrong. But it was a matter started in Europe by Europeans that should have been solved in Europe by Europeans.
I'm sure that you're aware, as we are, that there's a spectrum of Afro and African-centric views. I'm a little bit curious what you think then of the work of Asante, who, as far as I know, does call himself an Afrocentrist. Are you saying that Professor Asante's work actually is flawed conceptually?
I'm saying that all work under the guise of Afrocentrist is not perfect, but it is an earnest effort to restore Africa to a proper commentary in human history. I think Professor Asante's work is written too fast, and there's some things he hadn't checked out as well as he need to, and I think too many times Afrocentricity becomes a personality because, but that don't mean that I'm against African people discovering their history, their literature, their place in the political science of the world. That don't mean that I have not played a role in encouraging people to write about Africans in all the societies of the world. See, your talk keeps telling me what you have not read. You could not have been asking these questions about Afrocentricity if you have not read Anacalypsis, 2 volumes dealing with the massive expulsion of African people throughout the whole world. You could not possibly have read with any degree of understanding the 3 volumes, Africans in early Asia, Africans in early Europe, Africans in early America. We're not talking about no hearsay. We're talking about documents. Professor Joseph Harris's book dealing with the global dimensions of the African diaspora. I don't know. I mean, you keep telling me, you keep